been a incredible week, certainly for us at 1776, to share just a little bit for 1 week in the journey that 64 amazing startups are on, and the energy that this city has brought out to welcome them, and to welcome the spirit of what Washington, D.C. can do to tackle some grand challenges that face our country and our world. To recap a little bit and set the stage for what we're going to hear tonight, for those of you that were at the opening night party, right, we had a great time. We got out, we got to celebrate, see the expansion of the 1776 campus. But that wasn't really the substantive part, right? The substantive part happened on Sunday evening. So how many of you guys in the audience are Challenge Cup competitors? So I see some good hands in the room. There you go. Right, so we got together on Sunday night, and we got to know each other, we got to meet, we got to learn about what we were doing across all these different cities, across these different industries, what was common, what was unique, and we got to go on a, frankly, unbelievably inspiring tour. For all of us that are Washingtonians, right, I hope you guys are like me, and every time you do that walk around the monuments at night, and you see the lights, and you get to the Lincoln Memorial, and you read the second inaugural, right, it gives you that little chill, right? Well, for us to take 64 startups around and show them what an amazingly beautiful city we have, and what an amazingly inspirational city, the city that has a legacy of doing great things, was just amazing. So Monday morning, we all convened at 1776 around this idea of startups tackling grand challenges. Many of these problems we're here to celebrate tonight in education, healthcare, energy, smart cities. Right, these are challenges that in a previous generation, people would have looked to government to solve, or perhaps they would have looked to the social sector to solve, right? That's a problem for nonprofits to tackle. Right? But in this generation, right now, today, these are problems that entrepreneurs are tackling using amazing technology, new business models in an incredibly scalable way to really try to disrupt and transform these industries. And we dug into that and really explored these concepts. On Tuesday, we went to Idea Space down at Yards Park. We talked about what corporations are doing, how they're changing the way they do business, in part trying to become more startup-y themselves, but also partnering with startups, investing in startups, acquiring startups, right, so that they can protect themselves, so that they can grow more rapidly, but also so that they can make an impact on tackling these challenges. Wednesday, we went to the Studio Theater and we talked about what the foundation world is doing, and how the foundation world is really starting to take a much broader perspective of what impact means. Sometimes investing in a startup can be just as impactful as giving a donation to a nonprofit, right? And the different mechanisms and the different tools that they're using to explore change. Thursday, we had a wonderful time at Union Market in Northeast, and we got to really dig into the changes that are going on in the investment community today, in capital markets. Right? We're well past a world in which you want to build a company, you write a business plan, you go talk to a venture capitalist. Right? Now there's more and more richer and richer sources of capital starting to flow into and fund these startups. Right? We're at a point where, with the Jobs Act, with crowdfunding, very soon anyone, if they want to, can start to invest in startups that really can impact and change the world. And finally today, we had a tremendous program at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, where we really dug into these complex issues of the interaction between government and startups, both how governments can foster more startup activity, how they can create a policy framework that makes startup activity richer and more robust and can scale faster, but also how government itself is learning from startups and learning how to act more like startups in their own right. So all of that was the substance and the panels and the content. But I think for all of us, the really exciting part was the competitions every evening. So before we do anything else, for all of you guys that got out and either competed or got to watch some of those startups competed, let's get a hand. Were they not unbelievable watching all of them? It was pretty astounding. I mean, if we stop for a second and we just imagine a world in which even half those ideas scale up, right? They become our reality in everyday life around how we educate our children, how we manage our health care, right? How we use our resources, what our cities look like. right? It's pretty spectacular to think about what that would mean for the world. So we saw from our education startups, we had 2 great finalists that came out of that in Educanon and in Lingually from Tel Aviv, right? We heard from our healthcare startups. We met Cancer IQ from Chicago, and we met Metasafe, again from Tel Aviv. We met our energy startups, right? We looked at what Waterlens is doing to help drive more environmental safety around fracking water. Last night we had our Smart Cities competition, and we got to meet Mellow Cabs all the way from Cape Town, South Africa, right? They're going to put energy-efficient electric vehicle tuk-tuks, right, in every city in the world. And we got to meet what HandUp is doing from San Francisco to really help create much more access around identity and donations to help the homeless and those most in need. So it was an inspiring line of startups. There were a couple of themes through all of this, right? I think there was literally one person I saw that attended every single event who wasn't at the 1776 team. Right? May have been more, but I know I saw at least one person. And if you attended all of those events, there were some themes that became really evident, right? One is this idea of this increasingly complex but powerful interaction, right? Between government, between nonprofits, between the federal government and city governments, how governments around the world are working together, but how startups are starting to play an increasingly complex and powerful role in that interaction, right? Startups are starting to look at cities and saying, my gosh, there's a tremendous economic opportunity to build a great scalable business. As Tom Davidson from Everfi said, these startups aren't looking at education or health or smart cities and saying, gosh, maybe it's okay if I make a profit. They're looking at it and saying, I want to make an obscene profit. I want to build a really big scalable business that also makes a great impact. Right? Another theme that stretched throughout the week is the idea of the complexity, right? There's so much that can be taken from the lean startup model, from the cloud and mobile and big data and the Internet of Things, right? But you can't just take that model whole cloth and say, I'm going to throw it at trying to transform hospitals, or I'm going to try to transform the way social services is delivered, right? You have to really think about the complexity of government, about the regulatory environment, about how you deal with schools and charter schools, about how you deal with universities, right? And another theme that we talked a lot about is the idea of how globally connected all these ideas are. It was absolutely amazing when we were on the Challenge Cup tour, going to 16 cities around the world. And in every city you would go to, particularly the international ones, we'd meet the education startups and they'd go, you know, education where we're from isn't like where it is in Washington, D.C. We have real education problems here. I'd chuckle and go, you know, in Washington, D.C., we're pretty familiar with a lot of the challenges in trying to make sure all of our children get educated in the right way. Same thing in healthcare, right? We have real healthcare challenges where we're from. And when you dig into it, you'd see the same ideas, right, cropping up and growing up in cities around the world. You'd see these vibrant startup ecosystems starting to take hold. So tonight, we're going to hear from 4 amazing speakers, people who are doing tremendous work in their field to try to drive change in these industries and in these areas. And we're going to have 4 great people lead them in these conversations. We want these to be interactive conversations so we can really dig into these ideas. To open our 4 keynotes, I'd like to introduce 2 people. The first is my co-founder at 1776, someone who's done great work herself as an entrepreneur, who's gone around the country with Startup America, working on activating and growing startup ecosystems, and has been an unbelievable partner in growing and scaling 1776 over the last 13 months. So first off, coming out, Donna Harris. So Donna will be interviewing somebody who has been a tireless champion over the last several years for the DC startup community, but not just doing it here in DC, right? He has traveled to South by Southwest. He's traveled to China. He has beat the drum as loudly as he can. He's come to event after event, right? For those of you Sunday night that were at 1776 and got to see the welcome address, right? Not only did Mayor Vincent Gray give you guys a tremendous welcome from the stage, but he sat there, right, shaking every one of your hands, telling him that DC is the kind of place that wants to be a global epicenter for startups that are tackling meaningful problems. It's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Vincent Gray.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
Everybody knows you. They've seen you out and about and supporting technology very vocally. But I want to start with something maybe people don't know about you. So we'll do this to sort of warm up the conversation. So I asked a few people close to you for some things they might not know. And this is what I learned. I learned that you love ginger ale. You are a huge baseball fan. In fact, you still play softball.
I do.
You've lived in DC all your life, which might not be something people don't know. You were the first African American to integrate a GW fraternity. Mm-hmm. You've been to South by not once, but twice. You even took a pedicab while you were at South by. And I learned that your first exposure to DC Tech was actually at a DC Tech meetup, and that was 3 years ago. And while you were there, Peter Corbett asked the crowd to raise their hand and ask if anybody in the room was hiring. And almost every hand in the place went up, which really began to shape some of your thinking about tech, right?
It was absolutely phenomenal. I think there were, 600 or 700 people who were in that room that night. And you're right, almost everybody raised her or his hand to say that they were hiring, and in many instances, it was 2, 3, 4 people. And I did the quick math in my head. I said, no, there's 1,000 to 1,500 jobs sitting out here. We better get on this.
And 3 years ago, when we were really talking about the economy being stagnant and where are the jobs, that's pretty stunning to economy. So let's talk about Washington, D.C. You read about us in the newspaper, government town. Why really focus on tech for Washington, D.C.? What was the impetus driving that?
Well, first of all, we recognized as an administration fairly soon after we came in that we had to do something to broaden, to change our economy. Because you're right, people perceived us as a company town, as a one entity town, that everything was the federal government. In fact, people historically have thought that the federal government has paid for the district government to be able to operate. And that's just plain wrong, ladies and gentlemen. So let me disavow you any thoughts there. But in order to be as self-sustaining as we could possibly be, we recognized that we needed to do more than what we were doing. So we developed a 5-year economic development plan. And at the center of that was the recognition that in this region, Maryland had already launched out to attract a lot of technology companies. Virginia was stepping up its game, and we didn't want to be left in the wake. And we recognized that we had so many features, so many assets in this city that it seemed like a natural to be able to reach out and try to attract technology to the city. And frankly, we recognized, too, that it was a great opportunity to create jobs, high-level jobs, to get, professionals to move into the city who would be involved in technology endeavors. And with the number of universities that we have in the city, it was another way also of attracting talent from those universities who might otherwise move somewhere else, go back home, and we wanted D.C. to become their home.
Well, and if you look around town and you see all the skyscrapers, the construction that's going on. In fact, one of the mayors today from another city was saying they wanted that level of activity in their own city. The part of what I've heard is an excess amount of real estate space being on the market. And we think about who's going to fill that space. We have a lot of conversation about tech startups really being the job creators, and by the way, those job creators need office space. Talk about some of the development that's going on in Washington, D.C., just in terms of the millennials, the buildings that are going up, and the culture that is being created in Washington, D.C. that's drawing people to the city.
It is. It's a phenomenal level of development, which is, in my opinion anyway, is unprecedented. I was talking to our deputy mayor last week, and since we started this administration, we've now completed 78 projects that involve tens of millions of dollars. In fact, when you look at it in the aggregate, it's almost $7 billion of projects in which we've been involved. The District of Columbia is just a hot place to be at this stage. It's a place where people want to live. It's a place where people, want to work. And increasingly, people want to be able to work close to where they live. And that makes us an attractive place to live as well. You know, when I was coming up here this evening, I drove past a couple blocks down past, I think it was 11th and U Street. And there was a club right there, and the line was around the corner down the block of people waiting to get in. And I'm telling you, if there was anybody over 25 years of age in that line.
And that was only 7 o'clock. Wait till 11 when they all come out.
Yeah.
For us old folks, we'll be in bed.
That's right.
Then.
This is 7:15, right?
That's just the warm-ups.
You know, and technology is an endeavor that so many people are pursuing at this stage. And we want to be able to attract that talent into the city, keep the talent in the city. And so much of it, too, involves being able to create a technology presence in the city that is identifiable, and to be able to connect with our universities so that they help us to be able to not only create the talent, but keep them here in the District of Columbia.
So let's get specific. When you think about the strategies for strengthening the tech sector, and you look back and say, of all of the things that we've worked on during your administration, what are the things that you think have the most impact, the things that you're the most proud of?
Well, I think there's several. One is really trying to get the word out that we truly are committed to technology as an endeavor. And if you don't mind me saying it, Donna, I think being able to connect with you and Evan around 1776. And you're right, it started with a meetup, and then it just kind of grew from there. You guys, I think, opened up maybe 13 or 14 months ago, and we didn't know where that was going to go. But we knew from our perspective that we wanted to be able to grow the technology arena in the District of Columbia. And it just seemed like 1776 had the right idea. That is creating a place for startups, you know, and unless my math is off, you know, where 13 or 14 months ago there were no startups on 15th Street where you're located. Now you have more than 200 startups and several hundred employees who are working there. I think you've already had a few firms that have graduated and have gone on.
3 of them. Yeah.
The thing we don't want to have happen is, of course, that we lose those firms to the surrounding area, because we want them to be a part of the District of Columbia. And that has been a catalyst for other things also. We've now created Digital DC, which is a corridor. It's a branding, marketing effort to be able to get people to understand that the District of Columbia now is heavily invested and committed to technology. Digital DC is a corridor that starts around the convention center. I don't know how many of you know where the convention center is if you're not from here, but it's around 7th and New York Avenue, around in that area. But it goes all the way north, maybe 3 or 4 miles north, up past Howard University to around Kansas Avenue. And the idea is to be able to identify that as an area of the city where we hope to be able to attract technology firms. One, it will be an identifiable area of the city, but we hope that there's a synergy created among those who are engaged in various forms of technology, where the relationships will build upon one another and they can share knowledge, share information, share products, share talent, whatever the growth may be. So probably, being able to connect with you guys and having a clear vision for where it is that we wanted to go. I will say this, too, that we now have in our Deputy Mayor's Office for Economic Development, we've now created a technology concentration. We have a staff of people who work on it, not huge, but we got people now who are devoted to this. And we hope that it is institutionalizing the kind of commitment so that as people come in, they won't see this as a fad. They will see it as an inherent part of the growth and development of the economy here in the city.
So we were talking backstage a little bit about the Internet of Things, the fact that everybody is getting connected to the Internet, and the idea that tech will no longer be something separate, but something that is just intertwined in every part of your life. Talk a little bit about what you envision for the district in that world of everything being connected.
Well, I don't think there's any question but where we're going. I mean, you think back 20 years ago, and people probably didn't even know what the internet was. You know, and look at where we are 20 years later, and then think out another 35 or 40 years or 50 years from now. I think the technological advancements that we're seeing are going to allow us to solve problems in a very different way than we have. So many people hear the term technology, and they think it's just a field unto itself, but it's a means to an end. It's a way of being able to solve, to address problems that we haven't done before. We were talking about homelessness back there, and somebody, I guess, has created an app.
One of our finalists.
Yeah, has created an app that would address...
Hand up. Are you here? Hand up. Getting a shout out? All right.
They're probably out helping people who are homeless.
She might be out helping the homeless. Exactly.
In any event, it's a great illustration of how technology and technology advancements and the applications that are being created will help us solve social problems, will help us solve human problems, health problems. I think the future is absolutely limitless, and the more that we can develop here, the more we will see how those advancements are applied to real-life problems here in the District of Columbia. We have one, I guess you have one firm there that's working on, solving our taxi cab problems. They help with the payments, I think, because we finally have a meter system in the District of Columbia and a credit card system, and they're helping with the...
Can we hear it for credit cards in the taxis?
And by the way, for those of you who haven't been here before, the red and gray cabs, that's brand new for us. We just started uniform colors in our taxi cab system about 1.5 years or 2 years ago.
And we especially love the light on top that says, I'm available.
That's right, the dome. Yeah, you can see it. You can see it everywhere. And the only way the drivers can turn it off is to get out and flip the switch, which they don't necessarily want to do that, especially in cold weather. So it's all customer friendly in that regard. But again, we're seeing the real-life application of technology here in the city already. I'm anxious to see this application for people who are homeless because we, like many cities, have very substantial problems with people who are the problem of homelessness, singles who are on the street, and then we have a number of families who are homeless as well, and we're trying to figure out how we get them to permanence as quickly as possible. I wish we had an application right now that I could pull up and would show every vacant apartment unit in the District of Columbia, because we are ready to help people get started. But the problem that we have is accessing in a fast manner, a quick manner, an efficient manner, the information that says, here's where apartments are located, and we can help get these families situated in a different circumstances.
I think I saw someone scurry out the door right now to go build that. But it is truly an important question, and it's one that we struggle with at 1776. How do we make sure that the changes in technology, the changes in our workforce are applied universally across the economy? There's a significant proportion of the community that is impoverished. How do we make sure they can participate in the ecosystem?
That's a really good question. And we have very significant divides in the city. The further west you go in the District of Columbia, the more opulence that you engage. The further east you go, the more likely you are to encounter a set of very pronounced poverty conditions. One of the things that we have done, we have a tract of land, a facility. It was called St. Elizabeth's, and it used to be a mental health facility that for many, many years, because it goes back to 1860, it was run by the federal government, by the National Institutes of Mental Health. In 1987, the east side was turned over to the District of Columbia. The west side is still owned by the federal government, and they just built a new Coast Guard headquarters on the west side. But we have 180 acres on the east side, and what we have decided is that we want that to be a technology concentration. The reason why that's important and germane to your question is that that is right in the heart of an area where poverty is rampant. When we came into office, the unemployment rate in that one ward, Ward 8, was 26.9%, which is, supposedly the largest in the District of Columbia. We brought it down now to about 16 or 17%. But our intent is to be able to take a substantial chunk of the land there and create a technology presence. And we have gone out, our folks have gone out and done a very aggressive recruitment job. For example, Sidlam, which is a French-based firm, has committed to locating its North American headquarters on the grounds of St. Elizabeth's. And the one that we really are proud of, I wouldn't talk about this before because people would have told me, you better change your brand of smoke if I, start talking about this. But Ward 8, again, is the most impoverished area in the District of Columbia. And we have now gotten a commitment from a firm that is headquartered in Redmond, Washington, to develop an innovation center on St. E's grounds, and that is Microsoft. Now, if somebody has said, you going after Microsoft to locate in Ward 8 of the District of Columbia, it must be something really wrong with you. You better reopen that mental health facility and check yourself in.
I love it. I love it. Well, so one of the examples that came up when we did an event on sort of what is happening in the future of transportation is the idea that using technology, you can do things as simple as identifying where are there dark spots in public transit. You can track the bus availability, how long it takes somebody to get to work. You can use technologies. We have one competitor who helps people be able to search for human services help, as simple as, I need help with groceries, where's a pantry kitchen? So many different applications. You were a pretty big supporter of Ride Scout here locally when they launched. You came to their launch party. Talk a little bit about technologies like Ride Scout, the peer-to-peer, and the benefit that you think that brings to people that aren't necessarily the core target market that you would think of around an app that comes out of Silicon Valley or is targeted at sort of the core consumer.
Yeah, I don't know that there isn't any problem that isn't potentially advanced or solvable using technology. That's why I think it's so important for people to recognize that technology isn't just sitting over here, that it has a central role in us being able to solve human problems, to solve societal problems. That's how we see it being applied here in the District of Columbia. Ride Scout is one of the competitors, right? And they have helped the city with being able to access public transit, I guess our taxi cabs, for example. And it's a way of accessing information very quickly without having to pick up a phone. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that we had dispatchers who would send taxi cabs out, and maybe they showed up and maybe they didn't. I think that day is almost over. With advances
and
like
more
Ride
applause.
Scout.
Clearly, we've got a pain point with the taxis in the city. Well, so let's talk about what's next. What you think the next mayor of DC should be focusing on? If you were sitting having a closed-door conversation and giving counsel to whomever will take that seat, what do you think the things are they should be focusing on?
Well, I think they need to focus on the realities associated with our economy, first of all, that this has historically been a very narrowly based economy, and that by embracing technology the way we have, I think we have opened the door to really broadening the economy in the city. And what I mean by that is companies moving here and generating dollars, companies moving here or being created here and generating jobs, being able to build the population, being able to connect to universities. My advocacy, if you will, my speech to who the next administration would be, if you don't stay with this, you really have lost an opportunity. And what will happen is, it isn't that technology is going to recede or not continue to grow. It'll be growing in Maryland and it will be growing in Virginia because we will have essentially chased people out of the city. Our city is doing extremely well at this stage. We have the largest fund balance in the history of the city. We have $1,750,000,000 in the bank. which is about it's about $1 billion more than when I came into office. And I only say that to say that by continuing to stimulate the economy, as we've tried to do, especially with technology, we're creating more tax-paying people and more people who want to live in the District of Columbia, because it's really a fun place to be. So people need to know, too, that we have incentives, sales tax incentives. We can help with the hiring of people, in technology firms. We can offset corporate taxes. We can help with relocation expenses. We have a whole incentive package for technology firms for the District of Columbia. So if you all happen to be connected with a firm that's located somewhere else, we'd love to talk to you and get you to come to the District of Columbia, because we can be helpful.
For those of you that were at the opening night welcome party, you'll know that the mayor gave the hard sell at the opening as well. So what of capital? When we talk about the ability to grow a company in an ecosystem, access to capital is really important. And the district, like every other ecosystem, lags Silicon Valley significantly. Talk about what we can do to improve access to capital within the community.
Yeah, I think, first of all, that's one of our jobs in government, to be able to convince people to be investors. We have some angel investors here in the District of Columbia, and we've tried to be able to pitch them on the opportunities that exist with technology, and to become investors in some of these brilliant ideas that now are evolving in our technology firms here in the city. We I think, have a very clear role, and that is in government, and we can explain it, I think, in terms of being able to get people who otherwise wouldn't be in the city to come into the city and make investments. Early on in the process, I remember we got notified that a firm, New Brand Analytics, was thinking about moving to the Silicon Valley. I said, boy, it's like we're going backwards. We've got this goal to be able to stimulate more involvement of technology firms, and now we got a major firm that's about to leave. So our deputy mayor and I went over there because I really wanted to see what it was that they did. And they had this application that they had developed. Their customers were restaurants. And what they did was, it was almost a customer service tool that was completely automated. It was very clever. They would be able to collect data, and they were mining data in a variety of different ways, through Twitter, through emails, through text messages, and other ways. And they would ascertain from the information how people felt about the services being provided by their customers, and or by the restaurants to their customers. And so I sat there and I watched this, and I said, that's really pretty clever. And then I thought about it for a second. I said, this is really analogous to municipal services. So I said, Victor, why can't we do this? It'd be a great way of finding out from people how they feel about the municipal services. And we all know that sometimes people are not all that happy with cities or state services. So we got with New Brand Analytics and said, can you develop an application that we could use in the District of Columbia? The upshot of all of this is, what happened in the aftermath was, New Brand Analytics developed an application. We now call it Grade DC. And they are mining data about city services. And we started with 5 agencies. Then we expanded it to 10. And now we have 15 agencies that are being measured every month. And based on the data that they mine and analyze, and they have an algorithm that they developed to do that, each agency gets a grade. Now, what happened was, one, the New Brand Analytics didn't move as a result, because they got a contract with us to be able to do this work. But they then attracted additional investors, and I think they got investments around $20 to $30 million additionally. So they are still in the city, and it was a great illustration, I think, of what can be done when the government works together with the private technology sector.
But actually, please do clap, because I think that's a really important statement. But there's something, I think, more important in what you just said. The fact that you got out of your office and you went to the company, typically government waits for the companies to come to them. And I can testify the number of people from your administration, the leadership of the District of Columbia. We have Chief of Police Kathy Lanier has been over. We've had the Office of the Chief Technology over. Like literally you had your cabinet, entire cabinet come and actually meet at 1776.
That's right, we had a cabinet meeting.
It's really important to have the actual leaders of the city get out of their comfort zone, go into the startup community, and see what's going on. Because you are surprised when you get there to see at the caliber of the solutions that are being developed while you're there. And I think that's the bigger takeaway for me out of that story.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Donna, because, again, I think, unfortunately, you have people who really don't know, in some instances, much more than the term technology. They don't realize that it's a whole set of opportunities to solve the kind of problems that people in government who lead agencies are grappling with every day. Our Consumer and Regulatory Affairs Agency handles licensing and permitting. And one of the things that they have done now, and I think they've been catalyzed by the burgeoning technology opportunities in the city, people had to, businesses, which was maddening, they had to go through, if they had a bunch of agencies they had to go through, they would have to make a separate application to each one of those agencies. And in some cases, it was as many as 8 agencies, and people in some instances just gave up. Or they had the perseverance to work their way through it, and they were angry at the end of the process. We've made a commitment to what we call the One City portal. And that is an application that is allowing businesses to be able to access through one portal the website of every one of 8 agencies. So now, in a very streamlined way, they will be able to make their application with common data to all 8, if they need all 8, or 7, 6, whatever number of agencies, by accessing one pathway through this One City portal. So we're starting to see now, and our agencies are beginning to realize how technology not only will be a part of our economy for the future, it'll be a huge part of our way of doing business in the District of Columbia, serving the people who live in this city. We now have 647,000 people who live in the city. That's probably 100,000 more than we had 12, 14 years ago. And it's going to continue to grow if we do this the right way. But a part of doing it the right way is to make sure that as this population grows, people feel like this is a good place to be able to access services that they take, many places take for granted. Getting a driver's license, for example, getting your car inspected, being able to do those things in a really convenient, accessible way so that people don't leave mad. They leave saying, I love the District of Columbia.
Well, so I'm getting this sign to wrap. I do want you to answer one other question, though. So we have people in from all over the country and all over the world, and some of them are potentially asking themselves, how do we make our community strong? What can I go back in my community and do? What would your words of wisdom be to a mayor or their administration that's visiting the district to learn from the lessons of what has happened in D.C.?
Well, you put your finger on part of it earlier, and that is, as the mayor, as the leader, you got to get out of your office. You got to get out and go see what's going on, because probably almost every city has innovation taking place in some kind of way. It's either taking place with you or it's taking place without you. And that's one of the things we discovered, that, for some time now there's been, a technology presence, somewhat fragmented. But my job was to be able to get out of the office and be able to connect our folks, in this case through our Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development's operation, with these experiences in the District of Columbia. And then one of the roles of government is to figure out, if this is going to become an inherent part, an important part of your economy, what kind of incentives can you provide to be able to help these businesses grow and develop? As you know, we were very proud to be the first investor in 1776. We invested $200,000 and helping 1776 get started, that is going to pay for itself so many times over, especially just looking at the number of people now who will live in the District of Columbia and work in technology fields.
Wonderful. Well, I wish we had more time because I think there's much, much more the audience could benefit from. But I want to thank you for your leadership. Your administration, I think, has approached technology very different than others have in the past. You've looked at the ecosystem. You've gotten out of your office. You've encouraged your entire administration to do that. And we're grateful for your leadership and for your support of 1776, for your support of the Challenge Cup and the Challenge Festival. And we look forward to seeing where life takes you next and where the District of Columbia goes from here in building our tech ecosystem. So thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I want to thank everybody for I want to thank everybody, who came in from other places, internationally even, for, coming for the Challenge Cup. I hope that we can do this again. I hope we can do it real soon. And I don't know how many of you all are going to be here for a few more days, but I want to encourage you to do the following, and that is spend every nickel that you have in your pocket. we can use the money, guys.
There you go. Let's hear it one more time for Mayor Gray and Donna Harris. Picking up on that last question, somebody born and raised here in the region, for those of you that are not from DC, from those of you who go back to your cities, it is unbelievable how profoundly and how rapidly in one generation a city can change its very direction, and how it can go from being a place that you kind of muffle when you say, I'm from DC, to being a place that you're proud to talk about, the vibrancy, the ambition, the tremendous things the city is doing. And it's down to leadership from the very top, and it's down to leadership from everyone across the community trying to bring it together. Our next speakers, first, doing the interviewing, I'd like to introduce someone, a personal friend, but also somebody who's been a real champion here in DC for taking the stories that these startups are doing, the stories that the community is doing, and really helping to share those nationally and globally. She's from Bloomberg Media, and they have a whole program called Be West, where they profile Silicon Valley and they talk about those stories. And she is absolutely bound and determined to make Be East, profiling the amazing things that are happening here in DC, right? What the startups are doing to tackle grand challenges, just as big a deal. So first, from Bloomberg, Megan Hughes. And our keynote, someone who needs no introduction, but I will provide one anyway. So back when less than 3% of Americans had access to the internet, he decided that we were going to put America online, and went out and did it. From there, he created a venture firm that has invested in amazing companies ranging from Zipcar, which has helped us to deal with traffic issues, to Sweetgreen, which is giving us healthy salads every day, or at least in my case, twice a day. He has gone on from a policy standpoint to help to tackle tremendous issues through Startup America about how we regain our mojo as a country. He's worked tirelessly to help pass the Jobs Act. And as we were getting ready, I said, is there anything else we should mention? He goes, don't forget to talk about the work that's still left to be done, and that he's fighting for every day to make sure we have comprehensive immigration reform. So all of you entrepreneurs from around the world can come to Washington, D.C. and New York and Silicon Valley just as easy as you can travel around your own countries. Everybody, Steve Case.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Steve. Thanks for being here.
Happy
Friday, everybody. So it's Friday. I thought we'd get started thinking fun, big ideas, which I know, Steve, this is your life every day. But put on your prognosticator hat, look into the crystal ball for us. You talk about the next wave of the internet revolution being bigger than anything we've seen before in terms of innovation. What does it look like? Take us there.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here. I want to congratulate everybody, particularly Evan and Donna. It's been a great week for DC, great week for startups in 1776, and this whole Challenge Festival has been terrific. I'm glad to see so many startups here from all around the country, indeed all around the world. That's terrific. In terms of what's coming next, I've been doing this for a while. I first moved to Washington, D.C. 30 years ago, and we started AOL here in the D.C. area 29 years ago. And so I've watched this happen. And I would say in the last 30 years or so, we've really seen two waves of the internet, and we're about to see the third. The first wave really was building the internet, getting people to understand what the internet was, getting people to connect to it, which seems crazy now because everybody takes it for granted. But when we started AOL, only 3% of people were online, and they were only online an hour a week. And so, when we said we want to get America online, we really were serious about that. And that first wave took about 15 years, not just AOL, but companies like Cisco and others really helped build that foundation and build the connections and build the core services to get people to understand why it was important and to get connected. The second wave, which has been pretty much the last 15 years, instead of building the internet, it's really been building on top of the internet. And this is companies obviously like Facebook and Google and Twitter and more recently Snapchat and others. They're really building apps, products on top of that core infrastructure. That's created enormous success, momentum, all kinds of interesting product service, obviously a lot of value creation. And it's also been important. But this third wave, I think, is going to be particularly important because it's not going to be about building the internet or building on top of the internet. It's really integrating the internet into our everyday lives in a much more seamless way. Things like the Internet of Things, things like some of the topics this week around how do you reimagine and reinvent learning and health and transportation and energy. Pretty core aspects of our lives and pretty significant parts of our economy. Healthcare alone is 1/6 of our economy. So I think this third wave is going to be quite exciting, but it's going to be different. It's actually going to require some of the same skills in the second wave, but also some new ones. It's still going to require being passionate, still going to require assembling the right team, people, still going to require the right kind of product focus or sometimes platform focus. Those will continue to be the case. But in this third wave, the two things that are going to be different and create more complexity, frankly, are the need for partnerships and the need for policy to engage with governments. So this third wave, you're not going to be able to just sort of drop an app in the App Store and hope you strike gold. It's going to require partnering with different people, whether it be in learning or health or what have you. And it's also going to require engaging with governments, whether you like it or not. And there are a lot of people rather not. But the government's not just the principal regulator of things like health and energy and education, but also the principal buyer, the principal customer. So it's a very exciting kind of wave that I think is about to break, but it's a different kind of skill set, and entrepreneurs are going to have to understand that as we kind of enter this new wave, some of the skills that have powered the second wave will continue to be important, but there'll be some new skills that we need to learn.
And how is Steve Case riding the next wave? How does this Steve Case compare to the 1980s?
Well, actually, for me, it's been a little bit...
not wardrobe choices.
What's that?
We're not talking wardrobe choices, but just in terms of strategy, goal.
Well, I obviously spent a lot of time in that first 15 years mostly building AOL and trying to make the internet a part of everyday life. And most of the last 15 years investing in entrepreneurs in a whole variety of different sectors. And I will continue to do that. I have an investment firm, Revolution, not too far from here. And we really believe in this third wave idea. We really believe in investing in people and ideas that can change the world. We believe that things like learning and health and some of the things I talked about are desperately in need of disruptive innovation. And it's not going to come from the incumbents, it's going to come from the entrepreneurs. And I learned as AOL got larger, and certainly after we merged with Time Warner, there's a difference between being an attacker and being a defender. The entrepreneurs really are the attackers, kind of challenging the status quo, kind of disrupt the status quo, change the world order, if you will. And defenders are trying to protect what's there. And they want to grow, but they mostly want to protect what's there. And Fortune 500 companies, the incumbents are really the defenders. The entrepreneurs, including many in this room, are the attackers. And I think there's going to be a huge opportunity in this third wave for attackers. And at Revolution, we're going to try to back some of the best entrepreneurs in some of those sectors, and particularly back entrepreneurs that are spread all around the country. We think there are a lot of people focusing on companies in a few places like Silicon Valley or New York City. We'd rather focus in other places, including DC, but also cities all over the country and over time all over the world.
And that's exactly where I wanted to go next, because you recently made headlines for dropping $1 million at a Google event on 10 different startups. None of them were from the Valley. Right. What do you have against the Valley?
Well, I don't have anything against the Valley. I love the Valley. I think it's the Silicon Valley is the pride of America, and it's kind of the envy of the world, and will continue to be. So actually, I'm very bullish on Silicon Valley. I think what the main point I was trying to do, and it was part of the effort of leading the Startup America partnership, and more recently Up Global, which is Startup America and Startup Weekend, and part of the reason, as Evan mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time on legislation like the Jobs Act to legalize crowdfunding, so entrepreneurs everywhere can have access to sort of the startup capital they need to kind of get their idea going. I just think that there are entrepreneurs, I know, there are entrepreneurs all over the country, all over the world, great entrepreneurs with great ideas that have the opportunity to build great companies that can improve people's lives and create enormous value, and they're not getting the attention of the traditional investors or even media or other things. So trying to shine a spotlight on those companies in those places and make it a little easier for them to get started, a little easier for them to scale their companies is the main focus. I've called it the rise of the rest. I think that the regions around the country, and DC is actually extremely well positioned, but a lot of other places, Chicago and Detroit and Nashville and Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, there are a lot of places that have their own ecosystem, usually focusing on a particular area of expertise in that region. And I think the companies you'll see coming out of these different regions over the next decade in this third wave are going to be phenomenal. So we'd rather just sort of back them and champion them, whether it be through investing at Revolution or the work of things like Startup America and Startup Weekend or other things that can be done that really just make it a little easier for any entrepreneur with any idea, any place, to have a shot.
And you just rattled off a lot of cities. And with Startup America, you've really looked at a lot of these different regions. What are some of the regions that excite you the most, that you see having the most assets to do this?
Well, first of all, I'll spend a minute on DC because we're here, and I've lived here 30 years, and some of this was discussed earlier with the discussion with Donna and the mayor. But I think DC is uniquely well positioned. I think people will be surprised by the momentum in this third wave of DC. I've seen when I moved here 30 years ago, it was not a startup town. It really was a government town, and what's happened over the last 30 years is really quite striking. But I think we're still in the early days of what's possible here, and indeed, I think DC is uniquely positioned to lead in many of these third wave internet companies, because some of the things I mentioned around partnerships and policy, having a connection to what's happening here, I think will be helpful. It will help inform some of the decisions you make, and being even able to influence some policy to try to make sure that the rules are written in a way that's better for startups, better for entrepreneurs, I think also will be helpful. And the mindset that's required here, which usually is about partnerships and usually recognizing that, of course, you want to attack these problems with urgency, but sometimes you have to be a little patient. Sometimes you have to persevere. I think that mindset, I think, will play well in DC. So I'm very bullish on DC, and the main focus of our investing. We have two sides at Revolution: Revolution Ventures, which invests in startups, and Revolution Growth, which invests in later stage speed ups, what we call them. A lot of our focus is in the DC area. So that'd be number one. Beyond that, I think some of the markets that we've seen develop, and Startup America launched in 32 different regions over a 3-year period. So we watched this develop. In Colorado, Denver, Boulder is doing a lot of interesting things. Chicago is doing a lot of things. Minneapolis is doing a lot of things. Nashville's doing a lot of things. Louisville's doing a lot of things. Pittsburgh's doing a lot of things. But you're seing this really.
It was like asking you to choose a favorite child.
I'm sorry.
Is that what I did?
And I've been to all those places, and I think there's interesting things happening. And usually, as I said, there's something unique. Like Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon's based there, really a pioneer in robotics technology, and there are a lot of robotics startups in the Pittsburgh area. It is uniquely positioned to lead the way in robotics, which is a big opportunity. Nashville is a healthcare town. There's a lot of healthcare companies that have been there, and a lot of healthcare innovation, health tech companies are coming out of that. Louisville actually there's a whole revolution in food. What we eat, how we distribute food, how we grow food, and Louisville is a real pioneer in the ag tech space. So if you go around the country, you see different regions that have different strengths, and they're trying to play to those strengths. And I think it bodes well, frankly, for each of those regions. It also bodes well for the country, because if we're going to have a strong country, we're going to be the most innovative entrepreneurial nation, we've got to not just rely on a few places, we've got to even out the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem in our country, and building up these other regions, I think, is the best way to do it.
Now, talking to some of the startups around DC, and with Bloomberg, we look at the numbers. One of the obstacles has been, there's been growth in angel investing and in seed money, but when it comes to later stages, growing to scale, that's been where there's been a drop-off in some of these other places other than the Valley. Do you see that changing?
Yeah, I do, because I think money, capital chases opportunities, and you've seen the globalization of capital over the last decade, and investors are really looking for opportunities all around the globe. And I think as they recognize what's happening in places like DC or some of the other regions that we talked about, I think capital will flow there. But I'd say there are actually challenges in most regions at every step. There's a challenge at the early step to get going with the seed angel round, which is why crowdfunding is so important. There's a challenge at the venture stage, sort of the Series A stage, which is why trying to build venture firms with regional focuses, which is starting to happen, I think is very important. And then, as you say, there's a need to focus on the later stage kind of growth opportunities. But we're seeing even in DC, a lot of the firms that 10 years ago were in Silicon Valley and said, we're not going to ever invest in a company that we can't drive to, are now saying, we'll still do that, but there are a lot of great companies out there, and there are a lot of great investment opportunities out there, and if we really limited ourselves just to companies in our backyard, we're seeding a lot of opportunities. And I think that will accelerate over the next decade. I'd be surprised if all the leading venture firms, whether it be in California or New York or Massachusetts or wherever, didn't essentially have regional strategies and have people that were monitoring, tracking what's happening in these different sectors and these different regions. So I think this rise of the rest is going to happen. I think it's going to accelerate. I think it's going to surprise people.
Investing in some of the sectors that you mentioned, energy, healthcare, these are sectors that require working with the government, regulations, bureaucracies. Is that a deterrent from an investment standpoint? Do you expect the same returns as you would from a commercial tech?
Well, it's a deterrent for a lot of investors, and actually a deterrent for a lot of entrepreneurs, because it's like harder. There's sort of it is a harder challenge. Just trying to be a force for change and trying to improve how we stay healthy, or how we deal with chronic disease, or how we diagnose and deal with more life-threatening diseases is more challenging than creating a game that you drop in the app store. Similarly, education is complicated. What's happening at K-12, what's happening in higher ed, it's complicated. A lot of moving parts to it. And if you really want to revolutionize learning, it's going to take some time. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be hard, and there's going to be a lot of challenges and kind of roadblocks you face. But to me, that's there will be some that are like, ooh, that sounds like that's too hard. But I think there are more and more entrepreneurs that really do want to change the world and really do want to pick battles worth fighting. And there are more investors who recognize, while it may take longer and may require more patience and perseverance, the returns at the end of the road could be substantially greater. Because, as I mentioned, if you take on something like healthcare, it is 1/6 of the economy. There's going to be dozens of multi-billion-dollar companies created in that sector. So why not, if you're an investor, focus on that? Why not, if you're an entrepreneur, focus on it? But yes, it will be harder, and people need to recognize that it's going to require a different skill set, a little bit more of a frankly, a built-to-last mindset, not a built-to-flip mindset, because these great innovations, maybe somebody will get lucky, but most of them are going to be 5, 10, 15-year journeys to really have significant impact.
And what should the government be doing to help make that easier?
Well, I think the first step is creating, I think there's a role for government to set the table, put the basic rules of the road in place, make some core investments to enable certain things to, to happen, and then get out of the way and let the market, particularly let entrepreneurs kind of do their thing. So anything the government can do to stimulate more investment in things like basic research. Oh, by the way, the internet actually only exists because 50 years ago, the government, through DARPA, invested in basic research that created the internet, which then got commercialized and created a lot of value, both in terms of improving people's lives and creating a lot of economic value. So there is a role for things like basic research. That's particularly true in things like healthcare, which we're not investing enough in. There's a role for government in terms of trying to create the right investment incentives. Things like, at one point there was, if you invested in a startup, there was no capital gains if you held it for a certain period of time. And how do you create those kind of incentives so more people are willing to invest in startups? How do you change the securities laws like this Jumpstarting Our Business Startups Act to legalize things like crowdfunding so entrepreneurs can get the capital they need. Investors can invest in some of these ideas, and if they're successful, get some of the upside. The government has to deal with things like immigration. It is a federal issue. So there's some basic things that need to be put in place, and then trying to figure out ways to get out of the way. How do you open up more government data, for example, and release it to drive more innovation? All the things that are happening around GPS technology and mapping technology are only possible because the government opened that data. All the things happening on weather, all the weather apps and weather sites, that would not have been possible if the government hadn't released essentially its weather data. So, set the table, make some basic investments, try to unleash and unlock ideas and data that startups can then run with, but also be careful to not kind of get in the way in what should be a chaotic process where a lot of people try a lot of different things. Some work, some don't work. So I think that's the kind of basic role of the government.
So that was a lot in setting the table. That was a very busy table that you just set.
Complicated world.
Two things that jumped out that I know a lot of startups care about: immigration and crowdfunding. Let's start with crowdfunding. How long's it been now? 2 years since the Jobs Act passed? What's happening? I know you're very
well, I think
involved in this.
It's good news and bad news. I mean, I am frustrated and a little disappointed that the SEC still has not finalized the crowdfunding rules. I think a lot of people are. I know they want to get it right, and they need to balance the desire to unleash capital to support entrepreneurs that can create companies and create jobs and drive growth, while at the same time protecting investors and kind of minimizing fraud. It's a complicated thing to balance, but I think it's time to kind of get those rules finalized. The reason it's so important is it goes back to what we were saying before. There is a fair amount of angel capital in some places like New York City and Palo Alto. There's not in most parts of the country. And if you have an idea in one of those places, why not use some of these platforms, which some have used successfully for project crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, things like that. But why not be able to use that for equity or debt crowdfunding? That will result in more things getting started, and it also kind of democratizes access to entrepreneurship.
Though one of the big concerns has been that the public will be at risk.
And the public, there is risk associated with investing in startups, so of course they'll be at risk. But figuring out that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to allow people to invest. And the law that was passed put some limits on it, so people could only, depending on their income, only invest $2,000 in a company was the typical thing. So they're not going to put all their life savings into it. But I reminded people when they're debating this that it is risky, and some people invest $2,000 and they will lose their $2,000. That's true. We don't say when they go to Las Vegas, you can only invest $2,000. People can lose more than that. So at least we should be consistent in terms of how we try to, kind of hedge risk, minimize risk, and err on the side of trying to maximize the upside, maximize the opportunity. But these laws were passed, the securities laws that this updated, Jobs Act updated in 1933, 80 years ago. So it's going to take a little time to figure out, get this, working. It'll take a few years, for it to settle out. But I'm confident it will result in empowering more entrepreneurs and democratizing investing in a way that's going to be great for the country.
And immigration reform. I know you're very active in trying to get something passed. Do you really see it happening?
Yes. Yes. Now here's the. I am more optimistic than most folks in this town. I will concede that. And I guess as entrepreneurs, you always err on the side of being optimistic. But I think it's critical. I was involved several years ago at not only the Jobs Act, but kind of laying out a roadmap for making sure we remain the most innovative entrepreneurial nation. And the number one issue was immigration, because it's here in this city, it's sometimes viewed as a problem we need to solve. I view it more as an opportunity we need to seize. And if we're going to remain the most innovative entrepreneurial nation, we have to win what is now a global battle for talent, and we are going to lose that battle if we don't pass immigration laws that encourage people to come here and make it easy for people who want to stay here and start companies here, because if they don't, they're going to end up leaving and starting companies elsewhere that are going to compete with the companies here, and the jobs are going to be there, and the growth is going to be there. And it's crazy. And we have seen, particularly in the last decade, the globalization of entrepreneurship. And there are countries that have figured out that the secret sauce that's powered the kind of the American story is startups, entrepreneurship, and are doing all kinds of things around research, around investment incentives, certainly around immigration, to try to win this next battle, to lead this next wave. So we've got to do it. I mean, the Senate did its work last year, passed last June, a comprehensive immigration reform bill. The House said House leadership wanted to take a different approach, more of a step-by-step approach, which is fine, but it's time to take the first step, and it really has to happen this summer. If we don't pass immigration reform in the next 3 months, I don't think we'll pass it for a variety of reasons in the next 3 years, and we'll miss a huge opportunity to continue to invest in making sure we have the strongest entrepreneurial economy. So it's a critically important issue, and it really is something that we need to all work together in a bipartisan way to get done.
Well, I know a lot of people care a lot about that. Other big issue for tech, future of the internet this week, net neutrality. We actually had protesters at the FCC. That is not an agency that gets a lot of attention. Just what's your take? Can I just have you weigh in on what your thought is on this?
I'm not focused on it as much because I've been focusing on these broader issues around entrepreneurship and more recently on immigration. But clearly, we've got to make sure we take the steps to enable the internet to remain open and competitive and available to everybody, and have a kind of a level playing field. And that's the critical thing. You can't allow things to get blocked, and you can't allow people to be disadvantaged. At the same time, I understand the dynamic that to get the right level of investment in some of the next generation, particularly broadband technologies, there are some companies that do use a unusual amount of net resources, and there's some way to get compensated for that. Maybe there's some structure that works, but the core principle is make sure you do have an open internet, and that every startup, every individual citizen, has the ability to kind of hang up their shingle and take their shot, and has a level playing field that they can compete on. So I've not looked at exactly the details of what's been in place, but making sure that core open platform remains in place and everybody gets a shot, nobody gets disadvantaged, nobody gets blocked, I think is critical.
And last, on the government note, on news of the day, the future of the shared economy and how regulation fits into that. What are your thoughts on where that's going and how that's going to shape that sort of budding industry?
Well, this is a good example of what I was talking about at the very beginning about the third wave and why policy is important, even if sometimes as entrepreneurs, there's a tendency is to I don't want to deal with that. I've been involved in some of this sharing economy for a decade. We first backed Zipcar, one of the pioneers in the sharing economy, a decade ago, and really believed in the idea of car sharing. We've seen that now evolve in obviously a lot of different sectors, and it's a huge, kind of very exciting area now of our economy. But it will require updating laws to allow things to be possible in a world where new capabilities are available that weren't available 10 or 20 years ago, and it will take some time for those rules to be updated. Most regulations were put in place because bad things were happening, and the government said we should stop bad things from happening. This really is the history of regulation. Some of those things make sense, but many of those things don't make sense, and the reason they don't make sense now, but maybe they made sense 50 years ago, is the world has changed, and things that are possible now were not possible then. So trying to figure out ways to have regulations that do protect basic public safety and health and things like that, which there is a legitimate role for government to play, makes sense, while not stifling the ability of innovative entrepreneurs to do new things and not protecting the status quo, sort of protecting the incumbents. So the regulations that really are legitimately needed to protect the public should be updated to reflect the new realities that exist today with technology, the internet, and a variety of different aspects of it. But any regulation that's really designed to protect the status quo, protect the incumbent, or just is out of step with the reality of the lives we now live and the capabilities we now have should be tossed out. And it's not going to happen without people engaging on that topic. And so to really take the sharing economy to the next step, it does require engaging with governments and trying to influence their policy, to have them update those policies to reflect the realities of today and the opportunities for tomorrow.
So it sounds like you're an attacker that likes to spend a lot of time with defenders in Washington.
Well, I wouldn't say I like to spend a lot of time with them. That'd be a little overstatement. I'm willing to spend time with them because I think it's really important. But yes, my bias is more the attacker, but I also recognize that you've got to, kind of have coalitions around what you're trying to do, and partnerships are what we're trying to do, and particularly in some of these third wave areas like education, healthcare, things I mentioned. I think recognizing there is going to be a role, I think it's a legitimate role for government, both as a regulator and as a customer, and figuring out ways to engage constructively. I think is going to be more important in the future than it's been. It adds some complexity and adds some additional headaches, and things don't work as fast as you'd like, and there's some frustrations associated. But if you really want to take on one of these big societal challenges, one of these third wave opportunities, I think we're going to require just a little bit different skill set. Still being urgent, still being passionate, still being an attacker, but recognizing that you've got to have coalitions around you.
And I think you're leading me right there. I just wanted to close. We started out with big and fun, and we've got a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience, or entrepreneur hopefuls. What advice do you have for them, both in terms of what they should be getting into, where they should be focusing their energy, and anything on raising money, raising capital?
Well, I think we've covered a good bit of it. It kind of depends on what you want to do as an entrepreneur. I think it's not sort of one size fits all, and I celebrate anybody who's willing to take the risk associated with starting a company or joining an early stage startup. And I think there will be continuing opportunities in this current second wave, and if that's what you want to focus on, just getting the right product obviously is important. Figuring out ways to kind of get it noticed. It's the battle is now not to kind of get started; it's to kind of get noticed in a super competitive world. So how do you figure out ways to do that? How do you attract the right people? That's going to continue to be a core skill set. But if you want to take on one of these bigger challenges, I hope you will, because that's kind of what the world needs. I think we need to fix healthcare or fix education more than we need another photo app. Not that I don't like photo apps, but there are bigger opportunities and bigger challenges that in society that technology and startups can help focus. But if you're going to do that, you need to recognize that it's a little bit different. And the African proverb I cite a lot says, if you want to go quickly, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you must go together. And recognizing that, and recognizing it's about how you build coalitions, how do you build a tapestry of alliances, how do you take a little bit longer view, how do you a little more patient, a little more perseverant, while still being passionate and urgent. I think that's the dance entrepreneurs are going to need to figure out in this next wave. But it couldn't be more exciting, because the opportunities here, not just to build great, valuable companies, which is, whether you're an entrepreneur or investor, obviously is part of it, really improve people's lives all around the world in profound and transformative ways is exciting. And that's why this third wave, in some ways, it will be the most interesting wave of all.
Steve Case, thank you so much.
Thank you all.